Hello, authors. I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short non-fiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's episode is with children's author Oliver Phommavanh, who enlightens us about whether you have to be naturally funny to write funny, what the various types of humour in writing are, and shares with us his tips for authors looking to include humour in their work, as well as much, much more. So in my author adventure this week, I took a break from the computer screen and from writing, and it felt kind of weird, but it was definitely much needed. And now I have a few personal items I need to clear the decks with before I'll be getting back into the writing game. The next thing I'll probably be writing, there's been an idea for a horror movie script lurking around in my mind for almost a year now, or more, and bits and pieces of it keep coming to me. And it's kind of good timing, I think, because there's a screenwriting competition that is open now, I think, for submissions. I'll share the details for that if I go ahead with this, and ends in October. So I think the time is now for this. And for those who don't know, I did a minor in script writing at uni, and I'm a part-time tech script writer. Of course, these scripts are completely different to film and television, but I absolutely love that medium in a way to tell story. Is just, I absolutely am passionate about. So I did do a feature horror film at uni. It was different to this one. I am a horror fan. Definitely was when I was younger. I would like to try this now after writing something that was, quite different. So, of course, obviously, my non-fiction formats are still requiring my attention and still need to be put out. So seriously, let's all celebrate when I do get those out. But at the moment, I'm not thinking when that might be. A wholehearted thank you to those of you who donated to my friend's GoFundMe page last week and shared their post on social media. For those of you who missed it, dear friends of mine are facing stage 4 stomach cancer, have been raising money to travel to Germany for alternate treatments. And I'm happy to report they are there now, they're there with their young family, and I wish them all the strength, love and support and to find the answers that they need. So thank you everyone for taking the time to do that. It's just means so much. There is still time to donate. Links in the show notes. Dennis Jung's fight with cancer. Every little helps. Oliver Phommavanh loves to make people laugh, whether it's on the page writing humour for kids or on stage as a stand-up comedian. He also shares his passion for writing with kids using his experience as a primary school teacher. Oliver has performed at various comedy and writers' festivals around Australia and Asia. Oliver's recent books include Brain Freeze, Don't Follow V, and Natural Born Loser. But he is best known for Tyrific, Con Nerd, and The Other Christie. Welcome to the Hybrid Author podcast, Oliver.
G'day, Joanne. Lovely to be here.
Thanks for coming on. So, where did this love of humour and passion for writing spring from?
It all started in the classroom when I was a kid. So when I was 6 years old, I wrote my first book. Well, it wasn't the best book in the world, but it was a good start. And, ever since then, I've always been a massive writer. So I love reading as well. I used to went through big dinosaur craze, and I read lots of dinosaur books, which led to me writing about dinosaurs and writing dinosaur stories. At the same time, I was also a class clown as well. So I was always trying to make people laugh, pretend to be a dinosaur or just tell lots of jokes. And mostly getting in trouble with my teachers, but making my friends laugh. So my stories sort of became more funnier and wackier and crazier. And yeah, I kept that up in primary school, in high school. And yeah, when I left high school, I knew I wanted to be a writer. So
Wow, that's amazing to be able to realize your passion and talent so early on. I'm a late bloomer to writing. Felt like I was floundering around for years until I found my calling, but so tell us a bit about your books and what's been some of the feedback you've received from, say, kids and adults about your work being funny.
Yeah, look, I think especially with my earlier books like Terrific and Connered and Punchlines even were essentially about me as a kid or as a teenager. So I guess the feedback from kids has been great because they get to laugh at all the stories. They also get to relate to it as well. So when I was growing up, there weren't many books out there which I could relate to in terms of like what the main characters look like. So I really wanted to make an effort to actually talk about the Asian Australian experience and growing up Asian in Australia and what it's like to have the best of both cultures and trying to make the most of it. So Terrific, for example, is about wanting to be Australian, wanting to be normal, but of course the parents, they wear their heart on their sleeve and they like to share their traditions. And so it's that cultural cringe, that embarrassment that comes with having a family that, doesn't want to let go of those traditions. And a lot of kids actually come up to me and have said that, like, they can relate to it. They can relate to, the pressures of being a doctor or an accountant when they leave school because their parents think that's a very prestigious job. So the whole tiger mother, tiger parent aspect as well, I use for Connered. And that's something that I felt when I was a kid as well. So in terms of like what the kids have said to me, they can definitely relate to my main characters as well as having a laugh as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. There's, the relatability aspects. And I think even though it's from, say, Asian Australian background, just having parents in general that are sort of raw.
Yeah.
A lot of us can relate, I suppose. But
yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think that's what writing's all about sometimes, is just, getting that connection with somebody and giving that voice as well, which is amazing. So today's topic is on writing funny. You write, obviously you said you've written from personal experience and I guess things that have kind of happened to you that do you feel you write what you find funny or what you know to be funny?
Yeah, look, I think I always say, in order to have a sense of humor, you need to make sense of your humor. So always start with what makes you funny or what you find funny. And that way, once you tune that into your stories, you actually work out that, and this is something that I discovered as well, is that it doesn't matter how hip and modern the kids are. It doesn't matter how much technology they have. Fundamentally, it all comes down to the simple fact that comedy is still tragedy equals surprise plus time. So it's kind of like, it's just quite simple in terms of like some of the things that I've experienced as a kid are still things that kids experience to this day. So for example, having an annoying little brother or sister, or having very strict parents who are overbearing, or being embarrassed because they're not wearing the cool clothes that other kids are wearing. So that wanting to belong, that yearning to not be embarrassing or different is still there.
Oh yeah.
So I always say, like, if you do want to write for kids especially, tap into yourself when you were a kid growing up. And while the brand names and the trends have changed, that feeling you have inside will remain the same. And I think that's always been the secret of, like, for me especially, writing stories about the people that are a little bit strange, like left field. Like I always wanted to be a champion for the nerds, the geeks, the people on the fringe out there who feel a little bit strange and different. And I always tell them to actually own it, like, own being weird, own being different, and let others do what they want to do, but you stay true to yourself.
Yeah, and that's a great message, especially for kids, because it is hard. School for me was always, and I think for everybody, I don't know anyone that had just a sweet ride like through school. And even adulthood, we're still kind of dealing with those things, aren't we? Oh gosh. Do you think you have to be naturally funny to write comedy, or do you think you have to have some sort of natural personality, or you have to be a bit humorous, or do you think these things can be learned, I guess, to be funny?
Honestly, I say if you are naturally funny, then that's definitely a head start. But I would say that it's definitely a learned thing as well. So I always say there's always a difference between a class clown. There's always a difference between someone who is funny around their mates, always cracking jokes and making fun of people. And then there's also a stand-up comedian. And so it's kind of like, they might be funny among their friends, but when it comes to them being on stage, they're a little bit scared or it's not really their cup of tea. So in that sense, I think that there's definitely a toolbox that you can use to actually write funny jokes, write humor. And I always say that when it comes to writing, it's all about practice. And practice, the more you write, the more confident you feel. And the more funnier your jokes will be, the more you write. I think one of the things that writing funny is a little bit like daunting is that they think that they need to be funny on the spot or funny straight away.
Right.
But it's actually a learned skill. Like, I would write hundreds and hundreds of dud jokes to get to that golden joke. But to get there, you've got to write all these dud jokes. And so sometimes it's a process in your head that you need to work out what's funny or not. And that comes with just practice. The more you write funny jokes, the easier that will become. So instead of writing 100 dud jokes, you might end up writing maybe 10, and then you'll get to your golden joke.
Yeah. Sounds like the writing process in a way, actually. You write probably a few dud manuscripts till you get that golden one in the publishing deal.
Yeah.
Going from obviously humorous books and movies and various things that I've consumed and everybody else, there's different types of humor, I believe. Are you able to tell us what some of those are? Is there specific categories of what humor is and names for them, or?
Yeah, look, I guess I'm coming from like a kids writer's perspective. There's a lot of sort of like observational humor, and that's just things that people might see. The famous one would be someone like Jerry Seinfeld, who, have you ever noticed about airline food and, all that kind of stuff? And people can relate to that because it's things that he's seen. Then there's satire, which means you basically make fun of something. So a big example of that would be Captain Underpants, which makes fun of all those superhero cartoons and that kind of like comic book mentality as well. And then there's also, now this one's a little bit tricky because it has many names to it, but it's basically, I like to call the poking fun at self kind of comedy. And this is actually quite sort of trendy now, actually. Like if you watch a lot of shows, a lot of them are like poking fun at themselves, that self-deprecating humor. It's like giving you permission to laugh at me and my situation. And so it's kind of like the self-awareness that the situation is doom and gloom, but it's okay, you can laugh at me kind of thing. So sometimes the more tragic the situation is, the more funnier it gets because you kind of like have permission to laugh at them. So, you might call that like ethnic humor. You might call that all kinds of humor. Like, I find that especially with stand-up comedy, you always like to poke fun at what tag or what sort of label you might often get. And so it's your job to take those stereotypes and then smash them, for example. So so that's a kind of humor that I like to use in my stories as well. Like, I make fun of nerds and what nerds are like, and that in a sense break down the barriers of what a stereotypical nerd is. And so so that's what I like to do. And then of course we have slapstick, which is always funny no matter what kind of what age level you are. It's always funny to see someone with a pie in their face or falling down the stairs. And of course, and this is mostly to do with like kids, but there's also like bodily humor, gross out humor as well. So yes, I'm talking about farts and all kinds of things like that, and that's still pretty funny. And adults, we have that a different train of thought for that as well in terms of other things. But essentially, it's about pushing boundaries. And so the more taboo a subject is, the more funnier it can be if someone can nail a joke about it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. And obviously you stick with what you know. Should people do that, I guess? So would your tips be to authors writing funny, kind of write from their perspective, their experiences, what they find funny, rather than maybe identifying subjects or topics and kind of putting their spin on it or trying to make that funny that they're not sort of connected with?
There's actually those are both quite valid places to start, and sometimes for someone it could actually be they might just pick a topic or pick a subject, for example, homeschool or the pandemic or going on holiday, like that situation. So situational comedy was pretty popular as well. Sitcoms big on TV, and so you could do that as a basis. Think about all the problems, think about all the trouble that could happen at a workplace or at a school or at a daycare center, and so you could use that and then brainstorm and then write a comedy about that. The whole starting from self, I think that is great in terms of like being an authentic character, but at the same time you do leave yourself quite vulnerable as well. So it's really up to how confident you are in making fun of yourself, and at the end of the day you need to be comfortable with the kind of things that you write. So if you're comfortable at people laughing at you, then that's cool. But if you're not, then yes, it's something that's a little bit distance.
Yeah. Probably the thing with that would be, rather than people laughing at you, oh, I'm gonna mess this up, like have them laughing at you with you rather than the other way around.
Yes, that's right. That's what they always say. I'd rather have people laugh with me than at me. But unfortunately, they kind of sound the same. Like it's still laughing. So it's, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
Is there any kind of do's and don'ts with comedy? So obviously I can say taking the piss out yourself, or taking the piss out of, say, your nationality or something. Is there ever any backlash with that? Or, I don't know. And any do's and don'ts with writing comedy that you're like, no, just stay away from that? Or
look, I'm an old school kind of comedian in the sense of like anything goes. And I find that like the more offended you are, the more funnier it gets, because that's what comedy is all about. Like, if every joke, every piece of comedy always has a target. So there's always going to be a target no matter what. I mean, the pie on the face is funny because someone is getting the pie on the face. Like you're laughing at that person or that thing or that concept. So I'll say, like, anything goes in terms of like, you can write about whatever you want, you can joke about whatever you want. However, the delivery is probably the tricky issue. And especially in this day and age with cancel culture and people taking things out of context, it's just so hard to be able to deliver it in a way where you want it to be funny, but you also don't want it to be half-hearted in terms of like how mean you want to be. That makes sense. So you're going to make fun of obese people, for example, and you're not obese, then you need to be very confident to deliver it, or they need to know where you're coming from. And if they're a fan of your comedy work, if they've read your books before, they know you're quite tongue-in-cheek. That's great. However, all it takes is someone who reads that out of context, and then all of a sudden they're like, how dare you, kind of thing like that. So I don't know. I find that kids' humor, thankfully, anything goes still, because, I think kids kind of get it. Like, they're not, you're not being mean-spirited. And I suppose that's probably the only don't that I have, is they're going to know the difference between you making a joke because it's funny and you telling a joke because it's mean. You need to work out, that kind of tone that you have when it comes to writing as well, and delivering your jokes, because if you are just telling jokes for the fact that you're just being mean in general, then obviously the audience is going to turn its back on you because you're just being mean for no reason. So kids are great, aren't they? It just sort of goes over their head, and they don't see things, I guess, that adults see in that sense, like, like you're saying, if it's mean, and they just see, I guess, they're funny. But so you've already shared so many tips for authors already. Do you have any further tips to add for any authors, children's authors, or all authors looking to include humor in their writing? Look, I always find that, like, when it comes to writing humor, like, you always have to raise the stakes. And so another way to think about that is to just, what else can go wrong and how can we make things worse? And so when you have a character who really wants something, put as many obstacles as you can in front of them, add as much emotional stakes as you can to them. So, if they're really, really, really wanting that item and they're really annoyed, then just keep pushing their buttons and trying to make it worse and worse and worse. Like, have that snowball effect. Like, a lot of sitcoms that I watch, we have that fast factor of, like, a snowball thing leads to an avalanche of problems. And I always find, especially with humor, whenever a character tries to solve something, more problems appear. And so, and also, like, just have fun, have a playful sense, I think. Like, Roald Dahl does a really great job of doing this. Like, just with like wordplay, even changing a letter or part of a word makes something funny, changes the context, makes it outrageous. And also, don't hold back. Like we spoke before, like, don't be afraid that you're going to offend someone. Like, between you and yourself, it's just, at the moment, you're not ashamed of anyone. Just let loose. Put that sort of like critic put that sort of, that inhibition away and just write, because I find that you want to get to that funny spot, you really do need to just let all those barriers go and just go for it. So
yeah, I agree, absolutely agree. And even though that's implemented at Writing Funny, just writing in general, because I find my practice when I sit down, and I've been noticing lately, I will start to read over stuff, and it's more of a procrastination than going forward. And I'm just putting a lot of barriers and blocks in writing at the moment. And if you just release it all, release rather than having good writing, it should be this, or writing to formula. And like you say, trying to make this scene funny, just write from the heart. Then you get to that gold in the end, don't you? If you try and lose the inhibitions and the self-critic as well. So
yeah, that's right. And and don't be afraid to fail as well. Sometimes you do, I mean, it's cliche to say it, but you do actually learn more from failure. So for example, as a stand-up comedian, like, it's great to kill, it's great to actually, like, blitz the audience, make them laugh. But I find that looking back, it's the gigs where I don't do well, that's where I actually learn a lot more in terms of, like, oh, what can I do to improve? Is it my delivery? Is it the topics that I use? Was it the audience? Did I read the room well? Like, those kind of things actually help you much more than you just going on stage and just killing it. So,
And what would failure be to a stand-up comic? Like, no laughter.
Yeah,
tomato in the face.
It's nothing hurts more than having a room that doesn't react. So I would actually rather have boos or groans or jeers, because at least I know they're listening to me. But if I just get silence, indifference, then that makes me panic, actually. So so it's much more than just silence, but just having a lack of reaction. Like, it's just, they just haven't really made the connection, or they don't care, and that they turn off you, kind of thing like that. But I'd rather have someone heckle me on stage as opposed to, like, not saying it at all. Like, give it to me. Like, I think stand-up comedy is one of those rare performance spaces where you really are as vulnerable as you can be, and it's just it's
definitely
a roller coaster ride.
Oh, hats off to you. I don't know how you do it. I admire comics so much, because it's just one person going out in front of all these people, and oh man, worst nightmare. But congrats for that. Your YouTube channel is very on brand, author brand, I find. You're funny, your books are funny. The shoes that you've got in there, I've never seen any shoes like that. I was showing my husband, he was like, oh yeah, they're Yeezys, and I was like, they just look so strange. So was that intentional, like the YouTube channel kind of sticking with your author brand, going, or it's just it's your personality and these are the things you like that you showcase on there?
It's a little bit of both. Like, so the YouTube channel actually started from lockdown. So during lockdown, we couldn't visit any schools, and so I figured, why don't I have a YouTube channel where I talk about my books? I might put some, like, rowing lessons up there, and so that way kids can use that during homeschooling and so on. And now that things are slowly getting back to somewhat normal, and we're going out and about more, I've decided to, like, just continue having that channel there to basically talk about my book still. But also for me personally, like, a lot of kids don't actually know what an author does outside of writing book. And so, that's where the author branding comes inside. I always say that, like, being a writer is like being an old school Instagrammer, TikToker, YouTuber. What we do is we take what we love and we just write about it. And that's how we justify why we can, do all these things. And so, I think, and also from a kid's point of view, is that, like, kids aren't meant to be on social media. Like, they're not meant to be on Insta, Snapchat, and all that kind of stuff. However, they can actually look at YouTube still. And so I've made sure that my channel is, kid friendly. There's nothing sort of bad about it in terms of that sense. And so they can come up and leave me a comment, all that kind of stuff there as well. So I decided to leave it there. And it's been great. Like, it's just been a bonus. It's more of a side project kind of thing. And, I get an opportunity to vlog about my trips, what an author does when they visit schools or when they go to festivals, all that kind of stuff, and when they go into bookstores, all that kind of thing as well. And so it kind of gives kids a taste of what it's like to be an author. And it's also a lot of fun as well. Like, I'm not doing it to become the next Mr. Beast or the next sort of, like, mega YouTuber. Because I'm one of the things I've learned about doing YouTube now for 2 years is that it is a grind, and I respect anyone who wants to do it full time, because it is extremely hard work. So I've always treated it as something that, is there for the kids. It's basically another calling card, essentially. So yeah.
Yeah. I've seen a post someone put up saying that their posts take like a couple of days to even just make one post. Like it's quite time consuming, isn't it? Yeah. I watched a video of you were at school, I think, and you were getting over your fear of heights or something, climbing up and walking along, and and it's great because, like you said, you can incorporate your teaching background, and you look like you're very at home there. But that was awesome. All the kids were like, yay, chanting.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And, I always wanted to make a point that, like, authors, we are normal people as well, but also the fact that I always like to surprise them in terms of what they think a normal author looks like or behaves like. So honestly, I still get to be a big kid. I still get to hang around kids and just, have a bit of fun with them. And it just all comes with the job. And that's why I love it so much.
Yeah, oh no, fantastic. Well, do you have any YouTube? I'd say is not so common for authors usually, maybe in the children's sphere to go on there. But do you have any tips for authors looking to start a YouTube channel or put themselves on there? Is it mainly don't just share writing stuff, but share the overall experience maybe of what you do?
I think, like, honestly, the main thing to do is just to be authentic. So don't try to pretend to be someone different to yourself, because kids will see through that straight away. And also, if you're trying to chase what's trending out there, when it comes to those weeks where you have nothing to really vlog about, post about, you will get stuck because you're not talking about things that you actually enjoy. So from the outset, I've made an effort to actually talk about the things that I like. I try to find things that kids may be into, like, games, toys. And you don't really have to be into games. It could be your pets, for example, or maybe you like to go on holiday. Maybe it's your thing to collect seashells. Like, show those kind of things to kids because they're interested in that kind of stuff. So I think be authentic, share your interests, and basically let that be another avenue for you in terms of, like, if a school or if another author or if someone random wants to know more about you, they can look at that and have a sense of who you are before they see you in person. Or
no, that's fabulous advice there. So I should stay clear of my love of drinking red wine. Maybe for the kids.
Sorry. Well, I mean, that's another thing as well, isn't it? Because, like, it really depends on your audience. So
No, that's fabulous. Well, backpedaling back to your book, so you're living the author dream of many. Agent, top 5 publisher. As this is a hybrid author podcast, have you ever considered self-publishing going forward, or you're quite happy with where you're at? And
so look, I think at this stage, like, I'm pretty still keen to, like, continue working with my publisher, Penguin, and I have a good relationship with my editor and with my publisher still. That said, like, never say never. I find that what I'm more interested in now is actually the longevity of authors. And so I actually look up to people like Tristan Banks, Gus Gordon, Jacqueline Harvey, people who, or even like someone like Andy Griffiths, for example, who's been writing books for over 30 years. I find that when it comes to being a kids author, it is so hard to stay relevant sometimes because the people can forget you. I also discovered that, like, if you really are passionate about your books, there's not just one path. And I'm really happy that in 2022, there were so many different paths out there. There's so many different ways to success as well. Like, self-publishing is not a dirty word. It's something that, if you are gung-ho and you're keen and you can actually make it work, you actually may be in a better position than someone who's with a traditional publisher. So, when I visit schools, when I go to festivals, I know a couple of people who are, they self-publish, they do their own kind of thing, and they have done a wonderful job making that their career. And so for me, that's going to sustain them much more longer than you trying to, like, go down one path but then getting stuck. So
no, I know what you mean there, but it's amazing, especially on this podcast, kind of talking to a lot of different people doing a lot of different stuff. And some people like the control, or they don't have the time for the self-publishing, so they prefer the traditional. Another lady I'd spoke to, she had traditional deals, but they wanted to change her story, and it was like a big no, and she's gone down the self-publishing route. So it's amazing. It's just it's obviously personal preference, I think, and personal journey. But that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Oliver. It's been an absolute blast. You've shared so much insight to authors looking to write funny. So thank you so much. Where can our listeners find you, your work, off and online?
Yeah, so online, my Twitter and Instagram is simply Oliver Winfrey. So Oliver, Winfree. For more information about my books, you can just hit me up at my website, oliverwriter.com. So simple as that. Phommavanh would be too hard. I think even some kids would struggle just trying to remember how to say the first three letters of my name, let alone put it into Google there. My YouTube channel is simply Virtual Oliver P. So you can have a look there as well and see what I get up to.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So there you have it, folks, the hilarious and knowledgeable Oliver Phommavanh, who is in Perth for the upcoming Scribblers Festival, where he will be workshopping and entertaining all. Links in the show notes if you want to book in with Oliver, and of course buy his Laugh Out Loud books. They're hilarious. Next time on the Hybrid Author Podcast, we have entrepreneur, public speaker and author Mariam El Hooley chatting to us on why the best time to chase your dreams is right now. Have an amazing writing, publishing and promoting week. That's it from me. Bye for now. That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.